Hello, I'm Liz Lawless, and this is our Dynamic Authors Group Tuesday Book Club reading. And tonight we're very pleased to have Hester Johnson Moore, and we're having Hester back on for Women's History Month and Women's International Day that we've been celebrating here because she has such a unique story about being 16 and 68 and how she participated in civil rights activities during that time. And she'll probably tell us a little bit about, what she sees now, the things still going on so many years later. But to start tonight, I want to go ahead and play a recording. It's a little bit blurry, but I just want you to close your eyes and listen to the words and listen to what's happening. This is a presentation that Hester did with teenagers, with school children. And this is some of the stuff that she does with schools when she goes out to speak. So I'm going to share screen for a minute, and then I will go to the speaker view of her. So basically, like I say, if you just want to listen, can y'all hear it? That was the big thing.
Them in the background and how they began to move forward and how they began to move with me when we were going, I am somebody. I am somebody.
Can y'all hear?
I am somebody. And they kept going through that. It was so huge for me because I realized it's not my story alone. It's my story to share. Maya Angelou told me personally as I approached her and said to her, Miss Angelou, I love to write, but I don't like sharing. She looked at me and said, well, then you're cheating the world. If God gave you a gift, he did not give you a gift to keep for yourself. What if Chaucer had kept to himself? Shakespeare. She began to rattle off all of these different names. We would never know their stories. And I didn't get it immediately, but man, when I got it.
Thank you. And we do apologize for the blur, but we're learning. We're going to have it sent to her directly. Thank you so much for having me again, celebrating Women International Month. I always say Women History Month. That's what it was at first. And I always put 365 because we always should be celebrating. If you're celebrating a woman, she should be celebrating 365, right, Jay Stevens? Since you're there.
First of all, I'm outnumbered, so of course I agree 100%.
Yes, absolutely. Good answer. So thank you so much. It was so interesting when she asked me again, and I am delighted to be here again. We have so many dynamic authors, hint, dynamic. And so I feel very humbled to be sharing with you again tonight. It's interesting how a thought would get into your head and then you're presented with an idea or an assignment. So today I wanted to read to you some of the things that I witnessed maybe at 13 and 14 that led up to 16. As I approached the age of 16, I had witnessed enough footage on the nightly news of horrific scenes of Black protesters marching peacefully, only to be met by the police officer garnishing hose with water, the force and the impact of which would knock the protesters down to their knees as they landed on the streets and concrete sidewalk. Unable to get up, the fallen protesters would then be beaten by billy clubs, and then dogs would launch to tear their flesh from their bone. Now we're watching this on TV and at 12 and 13 years old. So terrified with my eyes wide open, I feared for the sanitation workers moving up to almost 60. I really did. They were on strike in Memphis. I prayed nightly, Lord, please don't let this happen in Memphis. So going back to that and the inspiration for possibly the inspiration for me, beside the professor threatening to give me a bad grade if I didn't write it, but sometimes it has to be in your soul to even pick up that. I could have just wrote anything to get a, A or B, but I had some backstories to help me. And there was one woman, an unlikely spokesperson, a stout Black woman. She was poor, uneducated, from Mississippi, and she spoke before the Democratic National Convention. She recounted many times when her life was targeted with threatening calls day in and day out. Fired from her job and beaten badly, but still determined to give Blacks in her county information to vote. I watched this brave woman, and I have never forgotten Fannie Lou Hamer as she stood her ground and plodded on. Her image, her broken English, her strength would stay with me forever. She was all of 45 years before she was able to vote. Fannie Lou Hamer said one of her quotes, "Sometimes it seemed like to tell the truth today is too much, too much. I'm sorry, you all, I got choked up. Anyway, sometimes it seemed like to tell the truth today is to run the risk of being killed." And Fannie Lou Hamer said, "But if I fall, all 5'4" of me will fall forward." Because she said, "I'm not giving up. I'm fighting for freedom." One other story that really touched me was Viola Luizio. She was a young white mother with about 5 children who lived in Detroit, Michigan. She told her husband, "I got to do something. I'm going down to Alabama." She said, "I must go." Unfortunately, one night she was riding with 2 workers and she was gunned down. The 2 gentlemen that she was in a car with, they were Black and they played dead. Um, Many freedom fighters lost their lives. Those are just a few that I mentioned. But I wanted to let you know that there were many instances where I was affected by just everyday citizens participating in freedom fighting. We say freedom fighting, but we're not talking about going out throwing things. We're talking about peaceful marching. So I wanted to read this to you. When you engage in history making, the authority of a specific moment in time can have a lasting impression. This time in my life left an imprint. I endured years of confusion, fear, hate, and guilt. I simply did not do enough. As I became older, I made myself invisible to the civil rights movement. Back then, it is unlikely that I conceived the notion of how these events affected me, how they shaped the Blackness of my womanhood and caused me to grow and become aware of the price that Black America had faced and what they are still facing today. So in my moment of despair, which was often, I had to come to myself. I had to realize that each of us has a role to play in this thing called life. My role was to be walking in a hall, and I said, I hope I wasn't cutting class. And 2 teachers stopped me. Um, they stopped me and asked me to come over and asked me, would I like to participate in a peaceful march that was going on downtown, the protest and boycotting of the stores? Well, my goodness, what did they see in me? Well, I was the newspaper editor. I was on the ROTC team, Miss ROTC in the Thespian Guild. And also I was a DJ for the high school. So maybe they saw some leadership in me. And I said yes, but really didn't know what I was saying yes to. Dr. King had sent word to the clergymen here in Memphis and said he wanted more young people to participate in this matter that would affect their future. That is how I became involved in the 1968 March to City Hall. And I just found out, a professor texted me. She said that was I Am a Man March, because you would see those signs. And they had those signs because they were treated like boys. They were not able to do what their fellow employees were doing. And they were treated like boys, talked to like boys, and they were paid like they were boys. And so you may have wondered, why in the world are they saying I am a man? Yeah, they are men, but they weren't being treated by men. So that is the beginning of being conscious of being involved, but not really thinking you would be involved. And once I got involved, and once Dr. King sent word and I agreed to do that, of course, as I said before, we could not participate unless we went to a nonviolent training. A lot of people don't realize that Dr. King was following Mahatma Gandhi's concept of peace. And he believed in that. He believed in love. He believed in, the races getting together. One of the things that I want to say, and it's in the book, but I know it, without having to read it. I said to Liz, 52 years later, which was last year, here we are again. I found myself down in Plano, downtown. I took my son with me, 16 and 68. They began to talk, and everything seemed to be familiar to me. I wasn't able to stay. I began to have anxiety because, as I said before, when we were hemmed up, the march never took place on March 28, 1968. When we were hemmed up in the church, we were demanded to come out. And what we were faced with were guns being pointed at our head and our chest area, and they had bayonets on the end. We had to come out with our hands open up. And I actually thought that we were going to die. So here I am 52 years later in Plano. And it just something like a heat, a wave came over me. And I looked around and I looked at the brown people, the Asian people, the Black people, the white people, and they were all young and old out there protesting for police, against police brutality. And this was happening all over the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I knew then that the young people would have to now take up the load. I wouldn't be able to do it. I went to another march, wasn't able to stay. And especially when I heard a young person say, wow, we're going to be on television. And I said to them, being like my mother would just speak to chastised kids and didn't know them. I said, let it not be about that. You eventually be on television, but don't let wanting to be on television to be your motivation for being down here, because people have given their lives for this. 52 years later, here I am, quietly. I feel like, what is it that I can do? Well, we'll back up 10 years ago when I began to start presenting it at schools. I'm still doing my part. I'm just doing it in a different arena. And I want to include the young people. I want them to know that so many of us were out there in the trenches, as one of the freedom fighters used to say. We were out there in the trenches. Some of them thought that we were slapped and we turned the cheek. Well, Dr. King did preach nonviolent, and I never had an incident other than a Caucasian woman spitting at me. But uh, did I retaliate? No, I didn't. I actually felt sorry for her because I felt that she would not live to see the day that people would get together and talk and work things out. Now you're going to have the violence in there. There's some, troublemakers going to come. We were trained for that. We were trained to exit, knowing exit points. We were trained to spot the FBI. We were trained for that. We never left alone. We always traveled in pairs. But we didn't go down there with bottles. We didn't go down there with bats. We didn't go down there with guns. We didn't go down with the thought that we want to destroy property because this is my way of protesting. No, we went down there to march to City Hall and we waited on Dr. King. And when Dr. King showed up, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you something. It seemed like the air, the wind, it seemed like it changed. It was just like something hovering over me. And I can remember a tear coming out of my eye. And then it started just coming more, but it was happiness. It was an appreciation that this man would come here to help these uneducated 1,300 sanitation workers that only wanted to be treated as men, making about $1.15 an hour. All right. Two men, a lot of public don't know this, but two men were sitting on the back of a truck trying to stay out of the rain. They were not allowed to eat in the lunchroom with the other employees, white employees. And they were sitting on the back of this garbage truck. And somehow one of them mistakenly hit the lever and it scooped them back and crushed them to death. They said, no more, no more. And that was, a lot of people don't know, that was the last straw, that they were going to just walk off their jobs. And Henry Loeb, Loeb, was the mayor at the time, and he was adamant about, getting some replacements and all of that, because he says city workers were not supposed to strike. But this Italian guy, I don't know his name, he was a big Teamster guy, and he came to Memphis. And I mean, when he spoke, everybody was listening. He said, and they did get a union. And so there was so many people involved. This is what I tried to tell my young people. When the young Blacks want to talk against the young whites and vice versa, there were all colors of people out there fighting just to vote, just to be treated like men, just to sit next to someone in a restaurant. And we can't lose sight of that. But I tell you what, it really had a big effect on me. I retreated big time. So I am grateful for Liz staying on me to redo that book, because it was for me just enough to do it. And I did the book, but it wasn't together. It really wasn't presentable. I can admit that. And I thank her for that. And when I get texts from my professor, when I showed her, and see, that's the beauty of her recording this, because I've been sending it all over the country, Florida, California, Memphis, Texas, and I'm getting, I'm going to order the book. So in a way, that's what we have to do. And my professor said, Hester, you must continue to tell the story until you die. You got to, because all of our stories are important. I walked around for years. Who was I? I was just a little 16-year-old kid. You have people, big civil rights right workers that became ambassadors and mayors. And I got married the next year. And there was a reason for that. And that's in the book. I really feared for my life, ladies and gentlemen. I really did. I looked over my shoulder many times. I could smell the mace. I can still see the guns sometimes. I've made it. I've done a lot of things, but it had an effect on me. I can't forget it. I don't hold on to it, but I haven't forgotten it. And so we must continue to tell our stories. Um, I dedicated this book to my brother. My brother was a 42 years educator in Memphis, Tennessee, graduated from college, could not find a job. My mother, my mother being my mother, went to City Hall. We had about one or two Blacks on the council. She found one, Reverend Nettis, and said, look, my son has graduated from college and he could not find a job. He had gone to Philadelphia. That was that's where he found a job there. And from Philadelphia, he was drafted to Vietnam. And when he got out of Vietnam, he couldn't find a job. Nobody would hire him. So he was hired 42 years, and also the basketball coach, won Teacher of the Year, and all of that. I dedicate that to him because he always said, education, education, education. And ladies and gentlemen, we read the newspaper when he was in the house. We had to read an article a day. That's why when I was chasing my then husband and the young lady had gotten his telephone number, I dared not call him from the house because we weren't, well, first of all, I was 13 years old. And I said, you keep the number because I got brothers here that very, very protective of their sister. Also, the book is I dedicated to a Mr. McGee. Mr. McGee was a neighbor. Mr. McGee was also, well, we call them garbage men. We didn't know anything about sanitation workers. And it was him coming up the street and we were playing a game and we said the next person come, one of us would speak and it was my turn. And when I spoke to Mr. McGee and I saw the distraught on his face, well, I talked to his daughter later. She said, well, that's because after he would picket downtown, he would work at an ice house. She said, Hester, he probably was tired. But he was a man that stood, like this, but now he, had his head bowed, but he did tip his hat. Men wore hats back, a lot back then. And when I saw the look, and I saw firsthand right down the street, one of my neighbors, one of my school friends' father, yeah, I wanted to also dedicate it because that was someone that I knew personally. So took me 30 years. Maya Angelou did tell me this in Orlando, Florida, when I thought that I would get by telling her that I like to write, and but I didn't like sharing. And let me tell you, that 6 feet and plus woman stood up in her melodious voice and said to me, you are cheating the world. God gives you gifts for you to share and not to keep. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope that anyone that see this will support us, the dynamic authors. Liz is an awesome leader in this, very creative authors. They're all over, all types of books. I get excited about Jay Stevens' books because she tells me he go and travel all over and learn recipes and all of that, so I love that. And then we have, Sharon and Linda and Bobo and their stories. So we thank you. We want you to support us by buying the books and getting the ebooks and all of that. And for the month of March for 16 and 68, we are offering a special for Women History Month. So go on Amazon.com and check it out. Thank you again. Thank you.
Mute.
I can't believe
Very
I.
good, Hester. Very
Thank you.
good.
I can't believe I
Wow.
flubbed. I was like, you know,
You didn't flub at all. You did
oh,
great.
thank you. Thank y'all so much. I really appreciate it. Guys, y'all are my new friends and I look forward to this, you know, each week. And yeah, it's all good.
That was
Very
really
interesting. Real
very,
interesting background.
Thank
yeah,
you.
very emotional. I felt verklempt a couple times. Um, and that you met Maya Angelou. Oh my gosh. How the focus on poetry now after Amanda, is it Gordon or Goodwin?
Yeah, it's a different name. It's either
Goodman. I think it's
Goodman.
Goodman.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yeah.
And I mean, I can't listen to her without getting emotional. It's just that depth of thought and the way it's portrayed and stuff like
Right.
that.
And one of the things that I noticed about her, if she says something about like the nurses nurturing, she always connect another word with the first word because I was noticing that, you know, so
Okay.
she's
Oh,
like 20,
interesting.
yeah, she's 20 something. So for me, it sounds a little rappy, you know, like a rap. And so I said, okay, I see what she's doing. She's taking grandmother was great, you know, she was good, great, you know, she, you know, make that connection, something positive, you know, to that. And I saw that Super Bowl, that's what she did too.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, she's definitely in there. She is our Maya Angelou. She really is.
She is.
But when I met Maya, I was scared to death. But I just said, and I brought my stuff, guys. I was like a little kid. I had had my poems up here, and as much as I perform in front of people, I'm very sensitive to one-on-one criticism. And it's not rhyming, or you need to. I wasn't studying it. I've always just, if I get an idea, I'll just write it down. I wrote a piece on my mother, and I just thought about, she had 15 children. She was almost six. She was almost 6 feet. Look at Linda. She was almost 6 feet. She wore a size 12 shoe. I've never seen my mother slim, only the time when she was, transitioning. But I wrote a piece, bold, beautiful, high yellow woman. She has full lips and wide hips, so, just kind of get it going like that. Her hands were bigger than any man, that kind of stuff. And I wrote a piece, my mama got big feet. When the welfare lady would come over, she would have to hide the bags of goods for Goldsmith, for Goldsmith, because we weren't allowed. She wasn't allowed to go to the goods store, but she couldn't find any shoes for her. She wore a size 12 shoe. And so I would just, pull, stuff like that together. There are poets in all of us, actually, really. We just see things and something funny or not funny, and we can write about it. I forgot to ask any questions.
Well, I think you did a wonderful job.
Yeah, some
Thank
of
you,
us are
Sid.
better poets than others. I
Oh,
don't think I'm much of a poet,
but I didn't realize I use that. I use that where she told me that God gives us gifts to share. They're not for us to keep. And I'm like, when somebody give me a gift, like a physical gift, you really don't want to give that away. No, God gifted gifts. God, his gifts.
You reminded me of my high school days. I went to a Catholic school which had nuns and whatnot. You could see my knuckles from the rulers.
Oh yeah, we got rulers.
Yeah, and I wasn't a great student. I was not into school at all. I had a band when I was in high school, and I was into music and whatnot because that's what my dad was into. And so I was not known as a particularly good student, but I had a Sister Mary Rose, I remember from years and years. She was she was the English art teacher. And I would write a lot, but mostly what I wrote were songs because of my music. But I would write them, I would start them out, and they'd really be poems. And then I would put music to them, and that's how I would do it. And she said, you should share this by speaking in front of your class of the poems. I went, oh, I could never do that. And she had a line, you reminded me of it, Hester. She used to always say, she said, knowledge is like manure. Unless you spread it around, it's worth nothing. I always remember that.
Oh my!
Isn't that good?
Oh my God! Knowledge
So
is
you
like
can be the
manure.
smartest person in the world, and if you don't share, it doesn't matter. It's not worth anything.
Yeah.
And so you reminded me of it, Hester, by talking about that. So I always just, knowledge is like manure. Unless you spread it around, it's not worth anything.
Wow. Okay.
She said, and if you spread it around, just like you were talking about with the new poet, you spread it around, and that allows that generation to grow.
Yes.
And learn and prosper. So
yes.
That's from the knowledge you did back in the 60s.
Well, and the deal is,
what happened.
Yeah, and the deal is too, is like I said the last time, there was a poster that one of the protesters had at one of the rallies. And she said, my grandmother turned her cheek, but we will F you up. And she, you know, she didn't use the word, well, no, she did use it. I was so upset because I said, how dare her? And then my niece made a comment like, oh, and this is a new day. We got to do something different. Love is love is love from then to now and forever. So you have a bigger house because of the people that fought for you right now. You have a bigger car. You have better jobs. How dare you say that we didn't do enough and we left this a mess for you all? Come on. Don't do that. Don't insult me like that. I'm insulted. And she apologized. I said, I want you to think about what you're saying. I want you to think about, I just saw the Billie Holiday movie. I want you to think about the fact that, okay, we can't get her on something, we'll get her on something else. I mean, that's real. That's really real. And you know, when she sang Strange Fruit, my son said, well, Mama, I just don't get it. They were lynching people. Why is what she's doing, bringing attention to that, is against the law or whatever? Because there was a shame attached to it. But if it's such a shame, why didn't they, you know, be part of the solution? But, you know, by getting rid of her and singing Strange Fruit, and the movie is really centered around that, you know, that song and mostly. And, you know, you can pretty much, you know, say and write and do things, but back then you couldn't. I mean, I remember the black water fountain, white, and I would always drink out the white water fountain because I thought the water was different. I thought it tastes different. It didn't taste different. When I shopped at Goldsmith, we always shopped in the basement. We came on the first floor and we were just, you know, you just felt weird because all the eyes would be on you. My mother shopped at a store called Levy's and Cook and Love because, like I said, she wore a size 12 shoe. And, you know, that was pretty big back then. Some years ago, I was talking to Shaquille's mother and I told her, I said, Lucille, girl, you could make a lot of money if you open up a shoe store because the girls are bigger now. I was looking at a game on YouTube and a young lady 6'9". Who would ever thought a girl would be 6'9"?
The women in Montenegro are tall like that. The average is like 6 foot. They're tall, wow. Very tall, big people.
Yeah. And my family's the same. I have a niece that's 6'4" with heels. She's about 6'6". I have another niece, 6'2", 6 feet. My niece's daughter played volleyball. I think she's like 6'2" or 6'3". So that was unheard of. We didn't have that. But my mother had to slip and buy from that. And also one of the neighbors told the welfare lady they believed that mother's boyfriend had given her a toaster. And we used to hide things under the sofa when the welfare lady would come because she was not allowed to receive a gift from a male friend like that. And if the neighbors found out, they would tell, look at Linda. Yeah.
Mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. It
And we
really
used
is.
to have to
Well,
line up. We
you
were, we
remind me
had,
of when
huh?
I went to, well, you remind me when I went to Cuba, I visited with, not, I didn't just go to the main areas. I went into where the people lived
Mm-hmm.
to see how they lived and how they
That's,
ate.
that's how I
And
like
this,
to travel.
yeah, and this one family was so nice, and she showed me everything that they, what they made, and I asked her, well, you know, what dishes do you do? And it was interesting. She said, well, there's no such thing. She said it's whatever we find in the market that day is what we eat.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, and we might have pork today, and we might just have beans tomorrow. So there isn't what's our regular dish. There is no such thing.
Right.
But the interesting side story to that is that when she was done, she was so nice. I said, look, I told my interpreter, I said, I want to buy her something as a thank you. And she said, no, you can't do that. I said, well, I'd like to get her like a microwave because they all cook in steam cookers,
Wow.
pressure pots. They make everything in pressure pots. They have these tiny little ranges. And I said, well, I'll get her a microwave. She would love that. She said, no, you don't understand. She said, if she gets a microwave, she said, two things are going to happen. First of all, either she'll use it as a coffee table, you know, because she doesn't know what to do with a microwave. Or number two, everybody in the town will come over and have her making things.
Wow.
Because she's the one who has a microwave, which will draw attention from the authorities, which is she doesn't want.
Yeah.
So you can't get her a nice gift.
Yeah.
You know, she said, you know, give her some money for food or something like that. That's what you can do. She said, I was like, it was so foreign to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I just couldn't understand
Well,
how the rest of the world lives sometimes. You know, it's so far.
Oh, yeah. Our level of naivete is unbelievable.
Oh, we just can't envision that kind of world at all, you know?
Well, the deal is because we all had big feet, and today I was just writing on Facebook about Goodwill. I said, Lord, I stayed in Goodwill. But the deal was you shop in Goodwill, but she did not want us to have cheap shoes on our feet. And I remember the day she, you know, we would have to put cardboard in our shoes because we were wearing them so long. And they would start, you know, rubbing off at the bottom of it. Another thing that I remember is, again, she was not really supposed to have a boyfriend because then they would want to know whether he was giving her money. Then they would count that against.
Do you want to say hi to people here, Bojo?
Bobo is up.
Liz, I'm going to have to go. I hate to do that, but I've got to
Sharon,
make a
thank
really
you.
important phone call. You did wonderful, Hester.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Hi,
Okay,
everybody.
talk to
How
y'all
are
later.
you?
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye,
Bye,
Sharon.
Sharon.
Hi,
Hey,
Sharon.
Bobo, we heard that you were taking a nap.
I did hear.
Hey, oh, he's here.
Did I
Heard
leave
you
you
were
when I
taking a
was-
nap.
I don't
No,
know.
I can't take a nap. My wife told me naps are no good for me.
Yeah.
No, that's the only rest I can get when she's in a meeting, so I can get away from her. Hey, that's a life in a big city.
Hawaii.
It's really tough that you
He's
stuck
got
in
it really
Hawaii
rough,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
It's
well,
really
yeah,
tough.
absolutely. I got it rough.
Well, we're
How
really
you guys
feeling for you
been?
right now.
How's everybody?
Everybody's
good.
we're good.
Good.
Thank you. So Liz, I thank you again. Linda, thank you. You know, your expressions tickles me.
I was profoundly moved by, you know, and some of it you had told that other time, but still it just like Bojar's stories. I mean, it's like, you know, I lived in a sheltered little life in, you know, mid-state Wisconsin, and, you know, great parents, great life, you know, lived on a farm, hundreds of acres, lots of animals, had a horse.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, my professor said when she texted me, she said, where you should have been learning science and math, you out, you know, protesting at 16. And Liz, I've forgotten which one said this, but they were saying, while we were at the YMCA swimming, you know, that's what 15, 16-year-old kids were doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Dr. King was very, very adamant about young people participating. We just didn't expect that. I mean, there have been countless of marches where they was disrupted, and that's what the young people think today. Well, they had things happen when he would march. I said, but y'all don't even get it. There was a breach. He didn't go down there to do harm. It was somebody else that did the harm. And so you're getting it twisted. Well, what was it? Martin Luther King, they had riots and this. And, no, but he didn't go down there to do that. And everything you do in life, there's always an agitator. Somebody to tell you you can't do it, or we're going to do it this way. Or they had some things on Facebook said the guy was laying up in the bed. I sure wish they can come to my city so I can get me on TV. Well, you know what that meant. So he wasn't doing anything, laying around. He was just waiting on a march to come to his city so they can go and break the law. You are breaking the law. That's the bottom line. And so one of the Black Lives Matter ladies said, we don't care anything about Target. And that hurt me, because there are people in there that work. There are people in there that have to feed their families. And how dare you say, let it burn down. Okay, so where are those people gonna go?
Yeah. Bouchard had made the comment in Milwaukee and Kenosha when they had the riots that woman said, well, the businesses have insurance. Your insurance doesn't always, it doesn't always cover natural disasters and riots and things like that. Those are some.
One has a right to do
Well,
that.
the thing what Dr. King said, and that nobody followed the thing, he said, don't break anything. Protest is good for the soul, good for the country, good for everybody. But he have millions of people follow him, but you can never see anybody go to a store, break anything up and stuff like that. That's not how he believes and stuff like that. That's
absolutely. And where are those people? This is what I said. Where are those people after the marches? After all of this has happened, where are you? What kid are you mentoring? Where are you going down to the Boys and Girls Club? So something, I need to do something to help somebody. So that's the spirit that I have today, even at this age. I have a spirit of giving love, receiving love. And, I get a little something when somebody is not friendly toward me, but that's okay. That don't mean that I have to be, unfriendly to them. But my whole thing is Dr. King had a really good idea: hurt the purses. In other words, if we boycott the store, and that happened, if we boycott the stores, the managers and the owners of these stores would get to the mayor and say, look, you need to stop this. I need the business. And that was smart. That was an awesome strategy. Yeah. Awesome strategy. Let's hit the purses. Let's hit the pocketbooks. And so you can still get what you want, but you don't have to destroy things and do things. You don't have to do all that to have your voice heard, because when it's all said and done, what are you doing after all of that? Yeah.
No, I agree. Well, it was fantastic. And Hester, you look very pretty today too.
Thank you.
I like to comment on your hair. You look 20 years younger.
Well, thank you. But I needed a man to tell me that. Thank you.
I think you come over to Hawaii, you even be younger.
I just thought it was time for me to get out of the afro, and it's so hot. It really is hot to wear. So I say I don't know how it's gonna look, but I love it. My niece did a project.
You look very nice. Don't tell anybody say.
Don't do anything, Bobo.
Okay,
said now you got a beauty consultant.
20 years younger.
Okay, thank you.
Liz, it's always good to see you guys. I love you.
All right, take care. Bye. All right, Liz, thank you so much again.